Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here today with the history of the WWE Hardcore Championship 24/7. I picked this up in the WWE shop Black Friday unboxing. I think I picked it up dirt cheap. I can't remember if it was $5, $10, something in the somewhere in that range. But this is a Blu-ray DVD release that honestly I wasn't gangbusters to run out and get. I really like the documentaries, and as far as I know, this doesn't come with a documentary. It's just a history of the Hardcore Championship, sort of, the best matches during its reign. Of course, everybody knows that this title was granted to Mick Foley. There's, sort of like an underground, sort of urban myth that this is the championship that Mr. Perfect broke on Saturday night's main event after a match with the Genius and Hulk Hogan. He hit it with a tack hammer and broke it. You can see that it's the old Winged Eagle Championship. It's got the duct tape holding it together. It's being told that this isn't that championship, but actually a different championship that they broke just to have this title. Of course, at the time, Mick Foley thought that it was a present from Mr. Vince McMahon. It was sort of a peacekeeping because of the fact that Mick Foley got screwed at the Survivor Series with the tournament, Deadly Games, where they ended up giving the WWE Championship to The Rock. Mick Foley, who was calling Vince dad at the time, thought that he was the golden one that was going to be given the championship, but it didn't work out that way. But they gave him this, and he actually treated it like it was a real prize, that he had won a real championship. And you could see the smirk on Vince's face when Foley's going off about it, that he doesn't give a damn about this belt. But from here, they would have hardcore championships matches. You see the likes of the Big Boss Man. You see Road Dogg. Here you see Tommy Dreamer. Here you see Raven. And there you see Rob Van Dam. It's sort of cool seeing the ECW guys down there on the bottom. We'll open this bad boy up. There you see Hardcore Championship Disc 1. Sort of looks like it's being held together with duct tape as well. Here we see the number 2. I don't have the best lighting in my bedroom. I apologize, but we'll run through these matches real fast. We see a hardcore journey onto the WWE, and then we see the birth of the Hardcore Championship on Raw of November of 1998. From there, we go to Mankind versus Shamrock. We see a ladder match between Mankind and Big Boss Man. I believe this is where Big Boss Man wins the championship. Very bad ladder match. Al Snow versus Road Dogg. Al Snow versus Bob Holly, St. Valentine's Day Massacre. They ended up fighting down into the actual Mississippi River. Bob Holly versus Steve Blackman. Bob Holly versus Bart Gunn. Big Boss Man versus Al Snow. Al Snow versus Steve Blackman. Test versus Gangrel. Test versus Crash Holly. Sparky Plug's Hardcore Maneuver. All right. Crash Holly versus Taz. Crash versus the Mean Street Posse. Crash versus the Headbangers. Somewhere during Crash's run is when they actually bring on the 24/7 gimmick of the championship is always being defended, whether if it's at Arby's, the airport, backstage at the event, anywhere a match could break out. Taz versus Perry Saturn versus Crash. Steve Blackman versus X-Pac. Shane McMahon versus Steve Blackman at SummerSlam 2000. Steve Blackman versus Edge versus Christian. We'll flip over here. Steve Blackman versus Raven versus Hardcore Holly. Raven versus Crash. Raven versus Big Show. Big Show versus The Rock versus Kurt Angle. Jericho versus Raven. Then we see the WrestleMania 17 match there. Raven, Kane, and Big Show. Very fun match where they actually go backstage at the Astrodome. It's probably not my favorite hardcore match, but definitely my favorite hardcore match at a WrestleMania. Kane versus Stevie Richards, Kane versus Rhino, was that Raven versus Rhino, Big Show versus Chris Jericho. From there, we'll take this one out, and I sort of took a sneak peek at this. This is probably one of my favorite things. ECW invades the hardcore division. Test versus Rhino on Monday Night Raw of 2001. This, of course, is when Steve Austin comes and just basically takes the championship. This was one of the first shots in the invasion, where basically, you know, they had run in and done some run-ins during matches, but because of the 24/7 rule, Mike Awesome pinned the champion, winning the belt, and he was able to take it. And ECW/WCW had really got one over. This was something that they could actually come. You know, Booker T was attacking Steve Austin at the time, but Booker T couldn't just randomly pin Steve Austin to become WWE champion. But Mike Awesome could attack somebody and win the hardcore belt. From there we go to Jeff Hardy versus Mike Awesome. Jeff Hardy versus Rob Van Dam. Rob Van Dam versus Tajiri. Rob Van Dam versus Kurt Angle. The Rock versus Rob Van Dam. Rob Van Dam versus Undertaker. Very, very good match. Undertaker would take the championship during his American Badass run. Have some matches on there. Then we go to Undertaker versus Jeff Hardy, Undertaker versus Tajiri, Undertaker versus Maven. That's after 2002, so that would be after Maven eliminated Taker from the Royal Rumble. Bubba Ray Dudley versus Raven, Booker T versus Stevie Richards, Stevie Richards versus Terry, Bradshaw versus Jeff Hardy, Tommy Dreamer versus Bradshaw, Rob Van Dam versus Tommy Dreamer, which would be an Intercontinental title versus Hardcore title match to figure out the titles being merged together. So after that, I believe Rob Van Dam won, which was the end of the era for the WWE Hardcore division. And after that, Rob Van Dam would fight against, I guess, Triple H to unify the championships. From there, we go to Al Snow versus Boss Man in the Blu-ray exclusives. Crash versus Mark Henry. 6-man match in 2000. Steve Blackman versus Test. Unforgiven Hardcore Invitational. Rob Van Dam versus Angle. Jericho versus Rob Van Dam. Undertaker versus Big Show. Goldust versus Rob Van Dam. And Bubba Ray versus Booker T. So nothing really shocking in the Blu-ray exclusives. Like when you over on the back here, we see the Hardcore Championship 24/7. Mankind, Raven, Al Snow, Rob Van Dam, Undertaker, Tommy Dreamer, Hardcore Holly, The Lethal Weapon, Steve Blackman, Crash Holly, WWE Hardcore Championship, Hardcore. Nothing really blowing it out of the water here on the back, but doesn't even list any matches that you're going to see. You see some pictures, you can figure them out, but just lists a whole bunch of people on the back that you can watch. So, I don't know. It doesn't look like WWE had high hopes with this one. Just probably had to send out a Blu-ray or a DVD that month, and it is what it is. We'll see.